Katie Blake stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around at the biggest space station she had ever seen. The metal walls stretched up so high she could not see the ceiling. Lights blinked everywhere, and strange sounds echoed through the corridors. This was Nexus Station, where the best soldiers from across the galaxy came to train. At 19 years old, Katie was the youngest human ever accepted into the Galactic Defense Corps. She carried her small bag over her shoulder and tried not to look too amazed by everything around her. Other recruits filled the landing bay. Katie stared at them with wide eyes. Some looked like giant insects with 4 arms and shiny black skin. Others floated in clear bubbles filled with yellow gas, their tentacles moving slowly inside. There were tree-like beings with bark for skin and leaves growing from their heads. A few looked almost human, but had blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to glow. Katie had studied about different alien species in school, but seeing them in person felt like stepping into a science fiction movie. A loud voice boomed across the landing bay. New recruits, form up in groups of 20. The voice came from a creature that looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. His scales were copper-colored, and his eyes were bright yellow. 3 rows of sharp teeth showed when he spoke. This was Commander Zexthul, and Katie could tell right away that he was someone who did not like wasting time. Katie found herself standing next to a Centauri warrior who towered over her. The alien looked down at her with all 4 eyes and made a clicking sound that she guessed meant surprise. "You are very small," the Centauri said in broken English. "Are you sure you are old enough to be here?" "I passed all the tests same as everyone else," Katie replied with a smile. She was used to people thinking she looked too young or too small. Back home in Montana, her high school football coach had said the same thing when she wanted to try out for the team. She had proven him wrong then, just like she planned to prove everyone wrong here. Commander Zexthul began his speech to the new recruits. His voice carried across the entire landing bay without any trouble. "You are here because your planets think you are the best they have to offer. Some of you come from worlds where danger is rare and life is easy. Others come from places where you must fight just to survive each day. Earth," he paused and looked directly at Katie, "is what we call a Class 12 Deathworld. This means your planet is dangerous enough that most life forms would die quickly there. However, this does not mean humans make good soldiers." Several aliens turned to stare at Katie. She felt her cheeks turn red, but kept her expression calm. The commander continued talking about different planets and their danger levels. Most of the recruits' homeworlds were rated Class 3 or 4, which meant they were very safe places to live. Only a few came from worlds rated higher than Class 6. Katie started to understand why everyone was looking at her strangely. After the speech, the recruits were divided into training groups. Katie found herself assigned to Squad 7, which one of the floating tentacle aliens called the Special Needs Group in a language the translator turned into English. Her squad mates included a nervous-looking blue-skinned humanoid named Bex, a small furry creature called Pip, who reminded her of a talking raccoon, and a rock-like being named Tor, who moved very slowly and spoke even slower. Their drill instructor was Sergeant Vextar, another reptilian alien, but smaller than the commander. His scales were dark green, and he wore more scars than Katie could count. "Squad 7, he announced, "you are here because your species are considered environmentally disadvantaged. This means your homeworlds did not prepare you well for military service. Do not expect to keep up with the elite squads." Katie raised her hand. "Excuse me, Sergeant, but what exactly does environmentally disadvantaged mean?" The question seemed to surprise him. "It means, human, that beings from safe, comfortable worlds do not develop the skills needed for combat. Your species may have survived on a dangerous planet, but you lack the proper evolution for warfare that species like the Xanthari possess. The first training exercise was simple. Each recruit had to complete an obstacle course that tested speed, strength, and problem-solving. Skills. Katie watched as other squads went first. The Zenthari warriors moved through the course like deadly machines, their 4 arms allowing them to climb and fight at the same time. The floating Vorth used their tentacles to manipulate multiple objects while gliding over obstacles. Even the plant-like Sylvani moved with surprising grace, their root systems allowing them to anchor themselves while reaching great heights. When Squad 7's turn came, Katie stepped up to the starting line. The course looked familiar to her, like the obstacle courses she had run during summer camp back home, just bigger and with more moving parts. The buzzer sounded, and she started running. Katie moved through the course like water flowing downhill. She rolled under spinning barriers, vaulted over walls, and swung from rope to rope without slowing down. When she reached the climbing section, she scaled the 30-foot wall in seconds using techniques her father had taught her for climbing cliff faces. A final obstacle was a maze filled with mechanical defenders that shot stun bolts. Katie slipped through the shadows, avoiding the defenders completely, and emerged at the finish line. The timer showed she had completed the course in half the expected time. Silence filled the training area. Every alien eye was focused on her as she walked back to her squad, barely breathing hard. "How did you move so fast?" Bex asked in his squeaky voice. Katie shrugged. "It reminded me of running from bears back home. You know, when you're hiking in the woods and accidentally get between a mama bear and her cubs. You learn to move pretty quick, or you become bear food." The translator worked overtime trying to process the concept of bears for the other recruits. When it finally managed to convey that these were 400-pound predators that humans considered a normal part of outdoor recreation, the squad fell silent. Sergeant Vextar made notes on his electronic tablet, his scarred face showing an expression Katie could not read. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, she wondered if maybe there was more to this training than she had realized. 3 weeks had passed since Katie arrived at Nexus Station, and she was starting to understand why everyone looked at her so strangely. Every day brought new training exercises that seemed impossible to the other recruits, but felt normal to her. During morning runs, she had to slow down so her squad mates could keep up. In the gym, she lifted weights that made the equipment groan while chatting casually with whoever was nearby. The strangest part was that nobody seemed to believe her when she said she was just doing regular stuff. Combat training started on a Monday morning that felt no different from any other day. Sergeant Vex Star led them into a large room with padded floors and walls. "Today we learn hand-to-hand fighting," he announced. "You will be paired with recruits from other squads to test your abilities against different species." Katie was matched with a Zenthari warrior named Kreltox, who stood almost 7 feet tall. His 4 arms were covered in natural armor plating, and his mandibles clicked with what she assumed was confidence. The other recruits gathered around to watch, probably expecting to see the small human get beaten quickly. "Do not worry, little earth creature," Kreltox said in his clicking voice. "I will try not to hurt you too badly." Katie smiled and took a fighting stance her older brother had taught her. "That's really nice of you. I'll try to be gentle, too." The match began with Kreltox rushing forward, all 4 arms reaching to grab her. Katie sidestepped easily and caught one of his arms in a move that looked almost like a dance. She twisted gently, using his own momentum against him. There was a loud crack as his arm broke at the elbow joint. Kreltox screamed and dropped to the ground, holding his broken arm against his chest. Katie immediately knelt beside him, her face full of concern. "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I barely touched you. I thought Senkari were supposed to be really tough." Medical personnel rushed in to help Kreltox while Katie stood nearby. looking confused and worried. Sergeant Vextar stared at her with an expression she was starting to recognize. It was the same look her gym teacher had given her in high school when she accidentally bent the pull-up bar. "Human Blake," the sergeant said slowly, "explain what you just did." "I just used a basic grappling move my brother taught me when I was 12, Katie replied. "He learned it in mixed martial arts class. It's supposed to be really gentle, just redirecting someone's energy. I don't understand why his arm broke so easily." The medical team carried Krell Tox away on a stretcher while he muttered something in his native language that the translator wisely did not process. The other recruits stared at Katie with a mixture of fear and fascination. Marksmanship training proved even more confusing for everyone involved. Katie stood at the firing line with a standard military blaster, the same weapon every recruit used. The target was 200 meters away, which the instructor said was the maximum effective range for most species. Katie raised the weapon, took aim, and fired 10 shots in quick succession. Each shot hit the exact center of the target with mechanical precision. When the target was brought back for inspection, all 10 shots had gone through the same hole. "Adequate," Katie said, frowning at the target. "Sorry about the grouping, though. Shot number 7 was a little to the left." The range instructor, a 6-armed alien named Officer Hexpan, examined the target with all 6 eyes. "Recruit Blake, this is perfect accuracy. There is no deviation in your shots." "But I can see where shot 7 went slightly off-center," Katie insisted. "Back home, my dad would make me practice until I could put 10 shots through a dime at this distance. This grouping would have earned me extra chores for a week." Officer Hexpan made several notes on his tablet, muttering something about requesting stronger magnification equipment to measure deviations measured in fractions of millimeters. The real test came during survival training on Kefter, a moon with poisonous air and twice Earth's gravity. The recruits were given environmental suits and emergency rations for a 3-day exercise. Most struggled with the heavy gravity and relied completely on their suits and prepackaged food. Katie spent the first hour exploring the area around their camp. She found 17 different types of fungi growing in the toxic soil and identified which ones were safe to eat after processing. Using techniques she had learned during camping trips with her family, she built a water purification system from rocks and sand that could clean the moon's contaminated water supply. "How do you know all this?" asked Bex, watching her construct a shelter from local materials that was more comfortable than the standard emergency shelters. "Basic camping stuff," Katie replied while weaving together some kind of vine to make. "Rope. My family goes camping every summer in Yellowstone. Dad always said if you can survive a week in bear country with just a backpack, you can survive anywhere." That night, razor wolves attacked their camp. These creatures were native to Kefter and looked like regular wolves crossed with industrial cutting tools. Their claws could slice through metal, and their howls could paralyze most species with fear. The pack surrounded the camp just after midnight. Most of the recruits huddled in their shelters, hoping their emergency barriers would hold. Katie heard the scratching sounds of claws on metal and grabbed a makeshift spear she had crafted earlier from a broken piece of equipment. She walked out of her shelter and faced the pack leader, a massive beast with eyes that glowed red in the darkness. The creature snarled and prepared to attack. Katie made eye contact with the wolf and said something in a tone that made every recruit in camp shiver, even though they could not understand the words. The translator later described it as aggressive, territorial vocalization with implied consequences for continued hostile behavior. The pack leader stopped snarling. It tilted its head and stared at Katie for a long moment. Then, without any explanation, it turned and led its pack away from the camp. They disappeared into the night as quickly as they had appeared. "What did you say to them?" Pip asked in his small, frightened voice Katie walked back toward her shelter, still carrying the spear. I told them this was our territory now, and they could either leave or find out why humans don't have natural predators. The next morning, Sergeant Vexstar filed his first official report about the human recruit. He spent an hour staring at his tablet, trying to find words that would not sound completely insane to his superiors. Finally, he wrote, "Recommend immediate reassessment of Terran capabilities. Subject displays anomalous survival instincts and combat proficiency that exceed all previous data on human species. Request consultation with Xenobiology Department and possible reclassification of Earth's danger rating." Katie spent the rest of the survival exercise teaching her squad mates how to identify edible plants and build better shelters. She had no idea that her performance was being recorded and analyzed by some of the galaxy's top military strategists. To her, she was just helping her friends learn some basic outdoor skills that every human child learned in summer camp. The final examination arrived faster than Katie expected. After 2 months of training, the recruits were told they would face the ultimate test of their skills on Veltara, a jungle world known throughout the galaxy for its deadly wildlife. The mission seemed simple enough. Survive for 72 hours while avoiding the planet's apex predator, the Shadow Stalker. Katie sat in the briefing room, listening to Commander Zexthel explain the exercise. The Shadow Stalkers were legendary creatures, 8 feet tall with 6 limbs and natural cloaking abilities that made them nearly invisible. Their claws could cut through starship hull plating, and they had never been successfully hunted by any known species. The mortality rate for this exercise was 15%, which the commander described as acceptable losses for elite military training. These creatures have ruled Veltara for millions of years, Commander Zexthul continued. They are perfect killing machines with no natural enemies. Your job is not to fight them, but to hide from them. Survival is the only victory possible against a Shadow Stalker. Katie raised her hand. "Excuse me, sir, but how big did you say these things were?" 8 feet in height, approximately 400 pounds in weight, the commander replied. Katie nodded thoughtfully. "So about the same size as a grizzly bear, but with better camouflage." The commander paused his presentation. "I am not familiar with this grizzly bear creature you reference." "Oh, they're pretty common back home," Katie explained. "Big predators, really strong, can run faster than humans. My dad always said the trick to dealing with them is understanding that they're just bullies who rely on intimidation. Most of the time, if you show them you're not scared, they'll leave you alone." Several alien recruits made nervous sounds. The concept of humans casually coexisting with 400-pound predators seemed to disturb them greatly. Katie's squad for the final exercise consisted of herself, Vexal the Corvin, Lixara the Vorth, and Zenkai the Zenthari. They had worked together during the previous months and developed a good understanding of each other's abilities. Vexal was their unofficial leader, a proud warrior who had started to respect Katie's unusual skills. Lixara provided technical expertise with her floating tentacles perfect for manipulating equipment. Zenkai brought raw strength and natural armor, though he was still nervous around Katie. After what happened to Krultox, the transport ship dropped them into the deepest part of Veltara's jungle, where the canopy was so thick that sunlight never reached the ground. The air was hot and humid, filled with strange sounds and unfamiliar smells. Bioluminescent plants provided the only light, creating an alien landscape that looked like something from a dream. Within the first hour, their motion sensors detected a heat signature following them. The distinctive pattern matched exactly what they had been shown in training. A shadow stalker was already hunting their group. Vexal immediately called for the squad to stop moving. "We implement Academy Protocol 7, he announced. Establish defensive perimeter minimize all movement, and wait for extraction. The plan was simple and had worked for decades. The squad would find a defensive position, set up motion sensors and energy barriers, and remain perfectly still for 3 days. Shadow stalkers were ambush predators who relied on movement to track their prey. If the recruits could avoid giving away their position, the creature would eventually lose interest and move on to easier targets. Katie listened to the plan with growing confusion. "Wait," she said. "We're supposed to hide from it for 3 days." "That is correct," Vexal confirmed. "The Shadow Stalker will patrol this area for approximately 72 hours before moving to new hunting grounds." "But there's only one of them, right?" Katie asked. "Yes, Shadow Stalkers are solitary hunters," Lixara replied with her translated voice. Katie looked around at the jungle surrounding them, her expression changing to something her squad mates were beginning to recognize. It was the same look she had gotten before breaking Kreltalk's S-arm, the same expression she wore when she faced down the Razor Wolves on Kefter. "So we have one predator, probably around 400 pounds, hunting in territory it knows well," Katie said slowly. "And our plan is to hide from it for 3 days and hope it gets bored." "That is the only viable strategy," Zenkai said firmly. "No known species has ever successfully confronted a shadow stalker in direct combat." Katie was quiet for several minutes, studying the jungle around them with intense focus. Her squad mates watched nervously as she examined broken branches, claw marks on trees, and disturbed soil patterns. She moved through the underbrush like she was reading a book written in a language only she understood. "Guys," she said finally, "I think your strategy has a flaw." "What do you mean?" Dexal asked. Katie pointed to a series of marks on a nearby tree. "Look at these claw patterns, and see how the undergrowth is disturbed here, but not over there. This thing has a regular patrol route. It's marking territory, just like any other predator." She led them to another spot where the ground showed clear signs of disturbance. "And look at this. These tracks are deep, which means it's moving slowly and deliberately. It's not built for long chases." Lixara's tentacles waved in agitation. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe the reason no one has ever successfully confronted a shadow stalker is because everyone always runs away from them," Katie replied. "Back home, we have mountain lions that hunt exactly like this. They're ambush predators who control territory through fear and intimidation. The trick is understanding that they're only dangerous if you act like prey." Zenkai made a sound that the translator rendered as horrified disbelief. "You cannot be serious. You want to hunt the shadow stalker." "Not hunt exactly," Katie said. "More like establish dominance. Show it that we're not prey animals, and this isn't its territory anymore." Vexal stared at her for a long moment. "Katie, this creature has killed trained warriors from dozens of species. It is considered one of the most dangerous predators in known space." Katie shrugged. "So are grizzly bears, but people still go camping in Yellowstone. The difference is knowing how to act around them." She started walking deeper into the jungle, following tracks that were invisible to her alien squad mates. "You guys can stick with the hiding plan if you want, but I'm going to go have a conversation with our new neighbor." The 3 aliens looked at each other with expressions of pure panic. They had 2 choices: follow their human squad mate on what seemed like a suicide mission, or abandon her to face the shadow stalker alone. Vexal sighed and checked his weapon. "If we are going to die, at least we will die as a squad." Katie smiled back at them as she continued tracking the shadow stalker through the alien jungle. "Don't worry, guys. I've been dealing with territorial predators my whole life. The trick is making sure they understand you're not afraid of them." Behind her, 3 of the galaxy's most advanced species followed a human teenager deeper into the hunting grounds of a creature that had never known defeat, wondering how their lives had become so surreal. Katie moved through the jungle like she had been born there, reading signs that her alien squad mates could not even see. She studied broken twigs, disturbed moss, and scent marks with the focused attention of someone who had learned tracking from her grandfather during hunting trips in the Rocky Mountains. The Shadow Stalker's trail was becoming clearer with each step, and she was starting to understand how this creature thought. "It's a creature of habit," she explained quietly to her squad as they followed her deeper into the jungle. "Look at these claw marks on the trees. They're always at the same height, always the same pattern. This thing follows the exact same route every day, probably at the same times too." Vexal examined the marks Katie pointed out, his reptilian eyes straining to see what seemed obvious to her. "How can you read so much from simple scratches?" "My grandfather taught me to track deer when I was 8 years old," Katie replied. "He always said that every animal tells a story with every step it takes. You just have to learn how to read the story." They followed the trail for several hours, with Katie occasionally stopping to examine disturbed soil or unusual plant arrangements. She was building a mental map of the Shadow Stalker's territory, understanding its habits and preferences like a biologist studying a familiar species. "Here's something interesting," Katie said, crouching beside a small clearing where several trees had been marked heavily with claw scratches. "This is a scent marking post. See how the scratches are deeper and more aggressive here. This is where it comes to establish dominance." Lixara's tentacles twisted nervously inside her environmental suit. "Should we not avoid such places?" "Actually, this is exactly where we want to be," Katie replied. "If I'm right about this creature's psychology, this is where it will expect to find challengers. This is where it will come to assert its dominance. When it realizes we're not running away." The squad spent the rest of the day preparing for what Katie called the conversation. She had them gather specific materials from the jungle floor, deadfall branches of certain sizes and vine types that would hold weight. Her alien friends watched in confusion as she constructed what looked like a simple shelter, but was actually something much more sophisticated. "Katie," Zenkai asked, "what exactly are you building?" "A trap, but not the kind you're thinking," she replied, weaving flexible branches together with practiced skill. "This isn't meant to hurt the Shadow Stalker. It's meant to demonstrate that we understand this territory better than it does." As night fell, Katie positioned her squad mates in carefully chosen locations around the clearing. She gave each of them specific instructions about when to move and what signals to watch for. Her plan seemed insane to them, but they had learned to trust her instincts over the past months. "Remember," Katie said as she took her position near the scent-marking post, "when it shows up, don't act like prey. Don't run, don't cower, don't make sudden movements. Just watch and let me handle the communication." The Shadow Stalker arrived exactly when Katie predicted it would. The creature materialized from the jungle like living shadow, its natural camouflage making it nearly invisible even when moving. 8 feet of pure predator, with 6 limbs ending in claws that gleamed in the bioluminescent light. Its eyes glowed with an intelligence that spoke of millions of years of successful hunting. The creature stopped when it saw Katie sitting calmly in the center of its territory. This was clearly not the behavior it expected from prey animals. It circled the clearing slowly, studying her with the cautious attention of a predator, encountering something new and potentially dangerous. Katie remained perfectly still, watching the Shadow Stalker with the same calm attention she had learned to use around mountain lions back home. She was reading its body language, understanding its posture and movement patterns. This creature was confused by her behavior, but not yet threatened. The confrontation began when the Shadow Stalker decided to assert its dominance. It rose to its full height and let out a roar that was designed to paralyze prey animals with fear. The sound echoed through the jungle like thunder, a noise that had meant certain death to countless creatures over millions of years. Katie stood up slowly and looked directly into the creature's glowing eyes. Then she did something that no creature on Veltara had ever done before. She roared back. The sound that came from Katie's throat was not human. It was the territorial challenge of something that had never learned to be afraid, backed by the vocal cords of a species that had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain through sheer determination. It was the sound of a creature that had survived ice ages and supervolcanic eruptions, that had tamed fire and built cities in the most hostile environments imaginable. The shadow stalker stopped roaring and stared at her in shock. Katie took a step forward, maintaining eye contact. She moved with the confident posture of something that belonged at the top of the food chain, something that had never learned to submit to predators. Her grandfather had taught her this body language during encounters with grizzly bears. Stand tall, show no fear, and demonstrate that you are not prey. The shadow stalker took a step backward. What followed was not a fight, but a conversation conducted in the ancient language of predators establishing territory. Katie matched every movement the creature made, answered every threat display with calm confidence. When it showed its claws, she showed her hands and the tools she had made. When it marked trees with its scent, she marked other trees with her own territorial markers. The process took hours, with the two apex predators slowly working out the boundaries of their respective territories. Katie's alien squad mates watched in amazement as their human friend negotiated with a creature that had never been successfully challenged by any known species. As dawn broke through the jungle canopy, the shadow stalker made a decision that would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. It acknowledged Katie as an equal predator and ceded a portion of its territory to her and her pack. The creature melted back into the jungle, but not in retreat. It moved with the respectful withdrawal of one apex predator acknowledging another's legitimate claim to territory. Katie sat down by her carefully constructed shelter and started building a small fire using techniques she had learned in Girl Scouts. Her squad mates approached cautiously, still unable to believe what they had witnessed. Katie, Vexal said slowly, "What exactly just happened?" "We had a conversation," Katie replied, feeding small sticks to her growing fire. "I explained that we weren't prey animals, and this was our territory now. It took a while, but we eventually worked out a mutual understanding." Zenkai stared at the spot where the shadow stalker had disappeared. That creature has never retreated from anything in its entire evolutionary history. "It didn't retreat," Katie corrected. "It negotiated. There's a big difference." She pulled some rations from her pack and started preparing breakfast. "Anyone want to learn how to make coffee?" Over an open fire. "We've got another day and a half before extraction, and I figure we might as well be comfortable." Her three alien friends sat around the fire, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Somewhere in the jungle, a shadow stalker was probably having similar thoughts about the strange new predator that had appeared in its territory. The extraction team arrived 12 hours early, their sensors having detected unusual readings from the training area. They expected to find either 4 dead recruits or a group hiding in terror from the shadow stalker. Instead, they found Katie, sitting peacefully by a campfire, teaching her alien squad mates how to identify edible jungle plants while something that looked suspiciously like roasted meat cooked over the flames. Captain Mordex, the extraction team leader, stared at the scene in disbelief. "Recruit Blake, where is the shadow stalker?" Katie looked up from the plant she was examining. "Oh, it's around somewhere. We worked out a territorial agreement yesterday morning. Really nice creature once you get to know it." The captain's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "You worked out an agreement?" "Sure," Katie replied, turning the meat over the fire. "Turns out shadow stalkers are pretty reasonable if you approach them correctly. This one's been living alone in this territory for probably 50 years. I think it was actually kind of lonely." As if summoned by her words, the shadow stalker emerged from the jungle. The extraction team immediately raised their weapons, but the creature ignored them completely. It walked to the edge of Katie's campfire, dropped a large piece of what appeared to be some kind of jungle fruit, and then settled down in a position that could only be described as COMPANI. ONABLE. Katie picked up the fruit and examined it. "Thanks, buddy. This looks really good." She turned to her stunned squad mates. "See, I told you it was just misunderstood." The extraction team's recording equipment captured every moment of what happened next. Katie shared her cooked meat with the shadow stalker, who accepted it with what xenobiologists would later identify as expressions of gratitude. The creature that had never been successfully hunted by any known species was having lunch with a human teenager who treated it like a large, dangerous pet. Captain Mordix filed the most unusual extraction report in military history. The footage was immediately classified and sent to the highest levels of command, where it was analyzed by teams of experts who couldn't believe what they were seeing. Katie Blake graduated top of her class 3 weeks later, though she remained genuinely confused by all the attention. From her perspective, she had simply applied common sense and basic outdoor skills learned growing up in rural Montana. The fact that she had somehow become the first recruit in Academy history to complete the Shadow Stalker exercise without losing a single squad member seemed like a happy accident. The graduation ceremony was attended by officials from across the galaxy. Katie stood with her fellow graduates, wearing the same standard uniform as everyone else, still not understanding why everyone kept staring at her. Commander Zexthol called her name as she walked forward to receive her assignment. "Marine Lance Corporal Katie Blake," the commander announced. "You are hereby assigned to the First Contact Division, where your unique abilities will be put to their best use." Katie saluted properly and accepted her orders. The First Contact Division was responsible for making peaceful contact with newly discovered species, a job that required a combination of diplomatic skills and the ability to handle dangerous situations. It seemed like interesting work, and she was excited to finally start her real military career. Her first deployment came 2 weeks later aboard the Starship Meridian. The ship was responding to a distress call from a scientific expedition that had made contact with a previously unknown species. The initial reports suggested that the aliens were hostile and had taken several human researchers prisoner. Katie joined the diplomatic team led by Ambassador Shentar, an experienced negotiator who had successfully resolved dozens of first contact situations. The ambassador briefed Katie on what they knew about the new species. "They call themselves the Kresh," Ambassador Shentar explained. "They appear to be a militaristic civilization that has conquered 17 star systems. Their leader has demanded that we surrender our ship and submit to their authority." Katie nodded and reviewed the files on her tablet. The Kresh looked impressive, with thick armor plating and multiple weapon systems. Their ships were designed for intimidation, with sharp angles and aggressive coloring that was meant to frighten potential enemies. "Have we tried explaining that we're not here to fight them?" Katie asked. "Standard diplomatic protocols have failed," the ambassador replied. "They seem to view any attempt at communication as a sign of weakness." The meeting took place aboard the Kresh flagship, a massive vessel that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never heard of the concept of peaceful architecture. Katie followed Ambassador Shentar into a conference room where they were met by the Kresh leader, a creature that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank. Commander Vexthok of the Kresh Empire stood 9 feet tall and was covered in natural armor that could deflect small weapons fire. His voice boomed through the conference room with the confidence of someone who had never met anything he couldn't intimidate. "I am Commander Vexthok, conqueror of 17 worlds and master of 1,000 ships," he announced. You will surrender your vessel, and